Okay, right. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we can. Right. So actually, Andy touched on this earlier on in terms of how we can spend more of our time doing the thing that we love and the thing that we're really good at, and getting rid of more and more of the other stuff. Because the more we do that, the better business we will have, the more profitable business we will have, the better control of time we will have. So we can actually end up with a situation where we're making more and more money, but needing to be there less and less of the time, as Andy said. Have any of you seen Jiro Dreams of Sushi, the documentary? Okay, so most of you know that I am a massive sushi fan. No, not quite as obsessed as, yeah, okay. But I love sushi. But there is a documentary on, I think it's Amazon Prime, called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. And Jiro Dreams is a tiny 9-seater restaurant in Tokyo. It's in some little kind of mall that's near the subway. It's a really kind of tiny place. And yet it is the only 3 Michelin star sushi restaurant in the world. Okay, so, and it is absolutely incredible. And the reason they gave him 3 Michelin stars is because the quality of the sushi every time without fail is off the charts. Needless to say, I haven't been to this restaurant, by the way. It's very much on my bucket list to go to. But it really does show you, if you want to get to be world class at what you need to do, you need to spend a whole lot of time focusing on it and getting what they would call deliberate practice. To the extent where he takes on a trainee chef, and that trainee chef for 5 years does nothing but make Japanese omelette. You know, the little sort of yellow thing that sits on top of some of the pieces of sushi. 5 years, that's all he does before he can progress up to the rest of it. It's absolutely insane. But what happens is they produce something that is world class. And that's what we want to be thinking about today. And actually, Andy referred to Flow earlier on. So Flow is a book by Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi, I think is how you say that. But we all know when we get into flow state, don't we? We have those days occasionally where you get to the end of the day or a meeting or an experience and you go, oh my God, the time just went. I was absolutely in flow state. And really what we're trying to do in business is spend as much time in flow as possible, because that's when we know we're really doing what we love, but we're also doing the thing that we're really, really good at. And that's the thing that has the greatest impact in our business. Everything else we shouldn't be doing. The thing that takes us into flow is what we should be doing. And when we're in flow state, I don't know if you remember from your school chemistry, the difference between exothermic and endothermic reactions. So endothermic reactions draw in energy. So when we're away from our flow state, things feel, when we're doing stuff that isn't the thing that we love, it actually drains our energy, doesn't it? And yet we can have those days where we are in our flow state, we're doing the thing that we love, and essentially it feels like it gives us energy. We just actually get more and more energy from doing it, even though it would normally be a tiring experience. And of course, when we're in flow state, time flies. Your time just vanishes because you're just doing what you love. And I remember watching, to stick with the food theme, I remember watching a documentary with Raymond Blanc, the 3 Michelin star chef that has the Le Manoir in Oxfordshire. And he was stood at the table here making canapes or something creative with the food. And roughly where the corner of that room was where the fridge was. And so Raymond Blanc is standing at the desk or at the table making the canapes. The fridge is probably 3 steps away. But Raymond Blanc never went to the fridge. In fact, he had a man whose sole task in life apparently was to go between Raymond Blanc and the fridge. That was all he did. But that's because Raymond Blanc knew that anything that took him away from the thing that he loves and the thing that he's really good at was taking away from the experience. It was meaning he was delivering less quality to his audience, to his people. And I know Asvin from many years of being on Strategic Coach together. And in Strategic Coach, the terminology they use around this is the unique ability. So we all have our unique ability, and that is kind of that stack of different things that make us amazing at one thing that we particularly love and that we're really, really good at. And actually, strategic coach is the perfect example of unique ability, because Dan Sullivan is the coach. He's the person that is brilliant at coming up with models and concepts and ideas and communicating them to people. But he's actually, by his own admission, really not very good at running a business. So Babs, his wife, I mean, I'd probably been on strategic coach for maybe 5, 6, 7 years before I met Babs. I didn't even know really that she existed for probably the first 3. And yet she's the person that runs the business. So they have used unique ability very strongly to create a very successful business. And I don't know, have you any of you seen the late Sir Ken Robinson's TED Talk, How Schools Kill Creativity? Probably the most watched TED Talk of all time. Certainly it was for quite a number of years. I don't know if it still is, but it is an amazing talk, absolutely brilliant talk. And what Sir Ken Robinson talks about is how we need to find our element. You know, schools typically try and create people that are quite average at everything, as opposed to helping people find their element and become exceptional and world-class at it. Back in the days where my children used to laugh at my jokes, which is days that are long gone now, teenage daughters, they refuse to laugh at anything, even if they admit afterwards that it was funny. But one of the jokes that they did like when they were younger was the joke around the young girl who stood on the corner of the street holding a violin under her arm, and she goes up to this elderly gentleman and says, "Excuse me, sir, could you tell me the way to the Royal Concert Hall?" He says, "Madam, practice, practice, practice." It's not a very good joke, I know, but nowadays, yes, thank you. But nowadays, when they ask me, you know, how they see something amazing on the TV, they go, "How does he do that?" I go, "Well, Theon, you know the answer to that." And they, "Oh, yeah, practice, practice, practice." But ultimately, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about the more we get rid of the other stuff and we allow ourselves the time to focus on what we love and we're really good at, the more we go from being good at it to being exceptional at it. And actually, there's a whole load of research around this that is featured in so many different books. It's all based around the 10,000 hours rule. So it was originally created by some research by a guy called Anders Ericsson. He said, if you want to become an expert in anything, you need to have done 10,000. You need to have 10,000 hours worth of experience of it. So the original study was around violinists. And what it said was that if the people that were quite good violinists, but not world-class violinists, had got roughly about 8,000 hours worth of experience. A small handful that had become world-class had got 10,000 hours. And in fact, there's loads of different examples of this. One of the reasons why the Beatles became one of the best probably the best live band on the planet at the time, was because they were spending 12 hours a day while they were in Germany performing live music, just one song after the next, and they became amazing at it. And there's loads of really good books on this subject, but Bounce, the Matthew Syed book, talks about Desmond Douglas, who's an incredible table tennis player at the time, and he was renowned for having the fastest reactions of any table tennis player in the world. And yet they later on did a study, and they found that his reactions were no quicker than anybody else's. What he had actually done was, through his 10,000 hours of practice, which was way more than most of the people he was playing against, he'd actually learned to use Andy's terminology, he'd chunked out what the player was doing. So he knew what shot the player was playing before they'd played it, because of the actual body movements he'd chunk. And they talk about chunking in terms of chess players as well. But ultimately, this is what Anders Ericsson described as it being deliberate practice. You don't become Lewis Hamilton by spending 10,000 hours driving around the streets of London in a black cab. It's why cabbies are not Formula One drivers, because it's not deliberate practice. You've got to be spending it in the zone, doing the thing that is helping you become world class. And if you do that, the compound effect becomes incredible. It's one of the reasons why at Efficient Portfolio, we really wanted to get advisors to spend as much time in front of clients as possible, because it meant they became exceptional financial planners, and that meant that they could just do a far better job for their clients. And we've seen this on the Triathlon podcast in terms of the compounding. We interviewed a guy called Leon Chevalier, really brilliant Ironman athlete. And he just talked about saying, you've just got to follow the approach, but the compound effect of that over time. And he basically has nothing to do with his training plan. He just says, my coach does that, builds the training plan. All I do is make sure I hit everything that he tells me to do. And the compound effect of that over time is really powerful. And that is what we're talking about when we're talking about focusing in on this and getting our deliberate practice and getting to that 10,000 hours much more quickly. And I've already talked about this earlier, so I'm not going to go into any more detail now, but ultimately what it allows you to do by delegating this other stuff, it allows you to go deeper and deeper into that thing that you are really good at and the thing that you love, so that you do become world-class in it. And in financial planning, an example of this was, I don't know if any of you guys have done any of the Kinder workshops, but the Kinder workshops, which are a 5-day workshop and a 2-day workshop. The 5-day workshop is essentially a life coaching workshop. It's teaching you how to interact with the client on a far deeper level than financial advisors normally would. But by allowing yourself to go really deep, you become world-class at what it is you do. So if we're going to delegate more and more, we need to think about some principles around delegation. And ultimately, delegation is about stopping you doing the thing that that isn't the stuff that you love and that isn't the stuff that you're brilliant at. And obviously, you can do that by just giving it up. You can delegate it, you can swap it, you can automate it, or you can transform it. But one of the things that Strategic Coach talks a little bit about is how you can feel guilty by giving away a task. Oh God, I bloody hate going through, analyzing the data in spreadsheets does my head in. It's just not my unique ability. I don't want to do it. And so that is my trash from an admin point of view, except for Debs, who works in Accelerate now and was part of Efficient Portfolio. That is her treasure. She'll get up early to come in and grind through data in spreadsheets. So we have to remember that one person's rubbish is another person's treasure. Because ultimately, because we all have different unique abilities. And if you remember when we looked at the Colbier Index, we talked about the different roles in a rugby team. That's exactly what this is all about. It's about finding the different element for each of the people in our team and making sure that they're spending as much time in that element as possible. And in fact, Dan in the Strategic Coach uses the terminology who, not how, which has gone from being a book that he produced at some point in the last 2 years to the terminology that pretty much everyone uses in every workshop. Because actually it shouldn't be about how, when you come up with a new idea, set a new goal, it's like, if you think about how you're going to do it, like for example, when we come to talk about AI in a bit, if we think how we're going to do it with all of these different AI tools, it's a nightmare. But if you think about who can help you, you can achieve way more than you would otherwise. So we've obviously talked about the Colbier Index. I know you know the Colbier Index well. We only just covered it in, I think it was the last workshop. So you've all now got your Colbier indexes and you're kind of hopefully understanding that. But that is also a principle that you need to think about when you come to delegating, is making sure that you're delegating it to the right people that actually have the Colbier Index to be able to deliver it. So I'm not going to go through that anymore today. And we went through the org chart around the Colbier Index profile as well. But if we are going to delegate, we want to make sure that we're doing it well. So the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that we're delegating it to the right person. So that comes back to the Colbier Index. Are we delegating it to somebody that's got the capability to do this? We need to specify the result that we want. It's very easy to delegate something. Please just take this away, and then realize later on, actually, I didn't really say what success looked like. So you need to make sure that you specify the result. Time frame that you expect it back in. Again, if you want to delegate well, you need to know exactly, you need to be very clear. I expect this done by this point. You need to understand that you need to both be clear, both you as the delegator and that person as the delegatee. Is that the right terminology? I'm not sure. Need to be very clear on how the progress needs to be tracked. Are they checking in regularly? And then finally, what's the authority of the person that you're delegating to? And if you do that with each task, you can actually ensure that you get a much greater success with delegation. So coming back to what you said earlier on, Claire, this is a really, you've got to make sure that when you delegate, exactly all of these things. And with that, you want to think about the authority levels as well. So the authority levels of who you're delegating to comes alongside how much experience they've got. So, are you just giving them a project and they're going to assess that project, research it, and just come back to you with all the information they find? Are you giving them it to deal with the whole project, but just to provide you with updates along the way? Are you giving them the project to handle and just tell me when you finished it? Or are you just saying, just make this go away? And actually, ultimately, this comes back to seniority. And in fact, we did an exercise we didn't do the exercise, but our strategic coach went through essentially a similar model at our last workshop, which was essentially, so excuse my horrible handwriting, but this was my scribbles at the time. But essentially, you start by getting to the point where you're telling them, you're showing them, they're watching what you're doing, you're checking it, and you're correcting their work. And then gradually, as they become more experienced, that turns into what, how, and monitor and report. And then at this point, they can start going away and going, actually, just tell me what it is that's needed, and then I'll report back to you. And then finally, it's just, they already found out that there was a problem. They're just reporting back to you that they've solved it. And ultimately, that's about the seniority of which seniority and experience of your team. So it's a new member of team. You'd have to start with all of the levels at level 1. Then as they become a little bit more experienced, you can shift to level 2. David's suggestion was that actually you should only be seeking a promotion once they go on to level 3, where essentially they know what to do and they report back to you. But it's worth thinking about in terms of where are your team members at each of these points. And sometimes a team member, so for example, what I've found is that team members that got to here when we were in efficient portfolio now might be in a very different place when in the new businesses, because they're learning a whole new thing. So sometimes you have to think about where they are in relation to the role that they're in as well. Now, of course, it might be that you leave here and you go, right, okay, there's just no two ways about it. If I'm going to delegate more, I need to employ more people. The great thing is that nowadays you don't actually have to employ those people. You can use, there's a website called Upwork. So if you want to recruit outsourcing people, then Upwork is an amazing resource of finding a wide variety of people around the world that can help you. But one of the principles I was given, or the advice I was given years ago, was you should employ your next person when you think you can fill half of their time. When you think you can fill half of their time, you'll fill the other half of their time by just finding more stuff, or because they'll do it less efficiently than you were to start with. But that's the principle that I used to walk away with, was every time I felt like I could fill another half a person's time, we'd employ the next person. And of course, you don't actually have to be delegating this stuff to people. We can delegate this stuff to technology. So I don't know whether I've used this example in this room before, but on the Triathlon podcast, we interviewed the top endurance athlete of all time, a guy called Mark Allen, won the Ironman World Championships in Kona, I think 6 times, but he won pretty much all of the Triathlon World Championships. And when we were interviewing him, he talked about how, as a coach, he's gone away from building the coaching program himself, and he's now using AI to build the whole training program, and he's just doing the emotional intelligence piece as the coach. So of course we can use technology, and I'm going to come on to AI later on. So we can use technology to delegate to, because ultimately that's about automating it, and it's about, accelerate. For example, we're thinking, well, okay, should we be outsourcing financial advisors work to India and the Philippines to to act as the medium between an advisor and lower cost outsourced work. But actually, we should also be thinking about that from an AI point of view. How can we take the work off financial advisors and get AI done it to do the work? And there's lots of different ways that we can use technology to do that. Kilu, the guys from Kilu aren't in the room today because they're speaking at a conference. But that's another great way that for financial advisors, for example, can delegate the legacy building part of what an advisor does to technology. Great piece of software. One of the things that you must delegate, you absolutely must delegate, is your inbox. Inbox is the biggest drain on productivity in modern day business. We get so much rubbish coming into our inbox. As we speak, probably Victoria is managing my inbox, maybe not, I don't know, I can't see over your shoulder, Victoria. Yeah. But I do not look at my inbox. I don't even look at my personal email inbox very much anymore. So I basically get Victoria to organize all of that. And essentially what that means is I only get to see what's really important. So for example, from a business point of view, I have predominantly two email folders I look at, or three actually. One is team, so that's an automated route. Anybody that emails me as part of our team automatically goes into the team folder. If any of my team are spamming me with too many emails, I'll be very quick to tell them, so that's easily fixed. And then I have buffer and focus. So buffer, Victoria knows that I will look at probably once a month. It's all the stuff that's not time sensitive, but I may want to see it at some point. So once a month, I'll go through and clear out the buffer folder. Maybe less than once a month, if I'm honest. But it's all the stuff that's really not that important, but I might want to glance over it and see that it's there. And then there's the focus emails. The focus emails are the things that are important that I need to see. But what that means is I'm going from probably 100 emails a day to looking at 3 important emails. And the rest of it is dealt with. And Victoria knows that she can delete stuff, she can file stuff, she can delegate it straight to the team. So if a client would email us, instead of me actually even seeing that, she'd have already delegated it to their client relationship manager, and it's already done before I'm aware of it. So the inbox is a massive drain on efficiency. And of course, like I said, there is outsourcing, so you can use outsourced firms. Accelerate being the obvious example of that for financial advisors to get rid of the crap. I mean, ultimately, I've just done a webinar for Accelerate, and we talked about the fact that as an absolute starting point, an advisor should not be doing any of that stuff. If they're doing any of that stuff and not delegating that to somebody else, then they are not spending their time on their unique ability. But one thing you can also think about is how can you delegate to a product? So when I wanted to help our clients build a lasting legacy that was beyond what we do from a will and trust point of view, I didn't have time to kind of talk all the clients through that stuff. So we just wrote the book, The Life Legacy Gift. And as a result, we could just give the clients the book and they had their guide to how they could create that legacy without me actually having to get involved thereafter. And of course, the product is a great way of gifting, delegating that expertise, but it's also a great way of then passing that on to other people. So the Life Legacy Gift, we're actually just, I don't know, I've told you guys this, but we've created the Life Legacy Gift 2.0. So this no longer points to anything to do with efficient portfolio. It's the whole legacy gift that any advisor can give to their clients to talk through, the importance of kind of the photographic memories, what they should do in the first, how to protect their loved ones if something happens to them in the first 14 days and all of that kind of stuff. And now it just points to Kilu, the software I mentioned earlier. So the idea being that you can actually give it to your clients and it'll just point them to Kilu and you'll just get credit for the fact that you've helped the clients build that lasting legacy. So you can delegate to a product. But the question I would ask you is, what is hanging on to those tasks really costing you? Is it costing you? It might be costing you money. It might be costing you free time. It might be costing you the fact that you're close to burnout or whatever it is. What is not delegating those tasks really costing you? And if you do delegate those tasks, the compound effect of that over time, because this isn't a one-off exercise. What I'm about to get you to do is an exercise that I did every year, and every year I'd come into it going, well, I did this exercise a year ago. How am I going to get rid of more? Surely I've got rid of everything I can get rid of. And then you start going through your list of jobs and you go, oh, actually, I could get rid of that, or I could get rid of half of that, or actually, I only enjoy a bit of that bit, so I'll get rid of the rest. So that's what we want to do.